Okay. Good morning, everybody. Assume your shopping is all done and trees are up and house is decorated. We'll call the meeting to order. We'll look to somebody to move the minutes of October the 25th. Moved by Councillor Mason, second by Councillor Russell. All in favor? Thank you. Approval of the order of business. Mr. or Ms. Clerk? Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mayor Savage. There has been an item that was to be circulated that has been sent to all members of Executive Committee this morning. Besides that, there are no items to be added or removed from the agenda today.
Okay. So that's item 12.1.1?
That is correct.
So that has been circulated this morning. Everybody aware of that? Does anybody else with items on the, or comments on the order of business? If not, does somebody want to move that? Moved by Councillor Russell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Outhead. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That's carried. Business arising. Declaration of conflict of interest. Motions of reconsideration, rescission, deferred business, tabled matters, we have none. Correspondence, Mr. Clerk.
All correspondence has been circulated for members on this for the agenda today.
Petitions. Presentations, we'll get to one in a second. Information items brought forward. None. Reports. 12.1. Item 12.1.1. Amendments to the Design Review Committee Terms of Reference. What is your wish, Council? Councillor Mason.
Sorry, my computer is still loading the agenda. Is that on your screen, Ian? Nope. There you go. Recommended that Executive Standing Committee, so I move that Executive Standing Committee recommend to Halifax Regional Council adopt the amendments to the land use bylaw for downtown Halifax as set out in attachment 2 of this report. Did I get the right one there? Perfect. Moved.
Second. Councillor Blackburn. Councillor Mason, anything on it? Councillor Russell?
Yeah, thank you. I'm simply wondering the justification for it. Changing the terms of reference of a committee. I get that it's not a large change, but I haven't had a chance to review the report, so would appreciate what the justification is. Thank you.
Councillor Russell, through Mayor Savage, this is a response to a request that came in from the committee. They were looking to try to extend terms unilaterally 1 or 2 years. That doesn't go according to the public appointment policy. This is a change to extend the terms for up to 3 years to allow for that rotation to happen naturally without having to make changes to the public appointment policy. We believe it will accomplish what the committee is looking for without having to make policy changes.
Okay, and would there still be members who would have a period of 2 years?
There would be. This would be done through the appointments that come forward, moving forward from the appointments.
Okay.
So we would do a rotation every 3 years. We would make it so we would change it for 1 year every 3 years, the next every 3 years. It should create a good rotation.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All those in favor? All right. Opposed? That is carried. We'll move to item 12.2, which is the Women's Advisory Committee. And we are going to have a presentation on the Women's Advisory Committee. And I believe the presentation will be by Dr. McKay Nesbitt, Dr. Jane McKay Nesbitt, who's the chair of the Women's Advisory Committee. I'll turn the floor over to you, and you can introduce whoever you would need to. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Mayor Savage and councillors and city staff members. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here to present this report to you. The report's been circulated with the agenda, so I'm not going to go through it in detail, but if you're like me, it never hurts to have a little bit of verbal updating as well. I'd like to speak to you briefly about 3 topics this morning. First, I want to give you a little bit of background on the establishment of the committee. Then I want to discuss our work over the past year and the outcomes that have resulted from the focus of our work on our priorities. And third, I'll just briefly review the recommendations that emerged from our gender-based analysis of the HRM's regional plan, and which we shared with the Regional Plan Review Committee. After my presentation, I'd welcome any of your questions. As you're perhaps aware, the Women's Advisory Committee was established in late 2019. Members of the committee were appointed in April of 2020, and as a result of COVID, the first meeting took place in September of 2020. At that time, I was elected chair, and I was re-elected chair again this September. With a couple of exceptions, we've met monthly, and all of our meetings have met virtually. I've had the privilege of working with this group. I think you see the list of councillors or committee members there. This group of intelligent, caring, and committed women. As you can see and hear from our presentation, we've been able to accomplish a little bit, and all of the accomplishments are due to the hard and effective work of these committee members. Our terms of reference indicate that we are to advise the municipality on the impact of municipal policies, programs, and services on women. Therefore, we determined that to effectively carry out this charge, we needed to be better informed about issues impacting women in the HRM. To that end, as a result of 2 brainstorming sessions in late 2020, we determined that our priorities for the remainder of the 2020 and through into 2021 would be housing security for women, the engagement of women in municipal affairs, and the review of existing municipal policies using gender-based analysis. Given the current situation of housing situation in Halifax, it's not surprising that the members of the Women's Advisory Committee identified housing security for women as an issue of urgent concern to the women of HRM, and thus for our committee. To better inform ourselves on the impact of housing insecurity and affordability for women, we received 2 presentations, one from community members representing the YWCA, Alice House, and the Marguerite Center, and one from an HRM staff member on municipal affordable housing initiatives. As a result of these presentations, we are in the process of developing actions that our committee might take that could address the housing concerns of women in the HRM and be appropriate for our committee, given that our mandate is to serve as an advisory committee to the HRM. Our first action on our second priority was to recommend to this committee that they request a staff report regarding the inclusion of women from racialized communities as part of the committee complement. A staff report was prepared as per the request of the Executive Standing Committee, and as a result, Administrative Order 2019-0040-Gov was amended in April of 2021 to include women from racialized communities. To better understand the issues preventing women from engaging in municipal affairs, we received presentations from committee members, community members, and staff members. We received presentations on anti-Asian racism and Canadian Muslim women from 2 of our members, our committee members, and I believe our committee members have also presented to this committee. We also received presentations on ISAN's work with women, the Immigrant Women's Association of Halifax, the programs of the YMCA Center for Immigrants, the impact of climate change on women in the HRM, and the report on women's quality of life in the HRM. All of these presentations were made by community members. We also heard from the local immigration project and the Indigenous women's perspectives from HRM staff members. As a result of Christine Yang's presentation on anti-Asian racism, we recommended that the Executive Standing Committee request a staff report on the provision of information resources to support the safety of women of Asian descent in public spaces in the HRM. We're really pleased that the Executive Standing Committee considered and accepted our recommendation that this staff report be requested. We also recommended that the Executive Standing Committee request that the Chief Administrative Officer, through the UN Safe Cities and Safe Public Spaces program, consider the impact of anti-Asian racism on women's experience of safety in public spaces and explore ways to identify and collect data about these experiences. We are pleased that the Executive Standing Committee also accepted this recommendation. As a result of Haneen Al-Noman's presentation, we're now in the process of developing recommendations to the Executive Standing Committee that they request staff reports that could identify ways that anti-Muslim racism against women could be addressed. We'll look at ways it's been addressed in other municipalities. I expect we'll forward a motion or motions to the Executive Standing Committee about this matter before the end of the year. To equip ourselves to be more effective in reviewing municipal policies using gender-based analysis, we devoted a meeting to learning about the gender-based analysis process that has been used in the HRM. In addition, all committee members have completed or are enrolled in the federal government's online course in Gender-Based Analysis Plus. I refer to this now as GBA Plus. In early April, we recommended that the Executive Standing Committee request a staff report regarding the implementation of the federal government's GBA Plus program as part of counselor training and orientation programs and for training for staff members of the HRM. We're really pleased that in July, the Executive Standing Committee recommended that the Halifax Regional Council direct the Chief Administrative Officer to implement the recommendations that emerged from the staff report. These recommendations focus on including GBA Plus training for counselors and for certain HRM staff members. In July, we received a presentation from the Regional Plan Review Team. Drawing on GBA Plus, we offered recommendations to the Regional Plan Review Team for the 2022 updating of the regional plan. Although our recommendations have not yet been put forward to you in the form of motions, we think these recommendations, if implemented, could have a significant positive impact on the lives of women in the HRM. Therefore, I'd like to take a few minutes just to review them with you now. Our first recommendation to the Regional Plan Review Team was really more of a procedural one. We recommended that in recognition that the HRM now has an advisory committee whose mandate is to specifically address the concerns of women in the HRM, where appropriate, specific references to the Women's Advisory Committee should be included in the strategy document. This will remind all involved that the Women's Advisory Committee has an important advisory role to play as the HRM attempts to meet the needs of its citizens in the months and the years to come. The remainder of our recommendations for the HRM centered on ensuring that the HRM focuses on the needs of all women, both urban and non-urban, as it develops strategy and policy and procedures for housing, transportation, safety in public spaces, and food security and accessibility. In conclusion, I believe that due to the hard work and effective work of our committee members, that we're off to a good start. As you've read and heard, we've had, I think, a productive year. We've considered and acted upon important issues that impact the lives of women in the HRM, and we feel proud of what we've accomplished. And we sincerely appreciate the steps that the Executive Standing Committee has taken to support our work, and we look forward to your support in the coming year. And finally, I'd really like to acknowledge the many staff members who have so ably assisted us this year. We've received assistance from many capable staff members, but I would especially like to recognize the support that I and the committee as a whole have received from Caroline Hemstock, who's our Diversity and Inclusion Advisor, and from Haruka, who's right next to me here, our legislative assistants. These two have been tireless in their efforts to assist me in learning the ropes, so to speak, and to the Women's Advisory Committee in achieving its goals. So Mayor Savage, thank you again for the opportunity to share some of the highlights of our year with you this morning. I now welcome any comments or questions you or others may have.
Thank you very much, Doctor. So we're going to put the motion on the floor to accept that. Councillor Blackburn, do you want to lead us on that? And if there's any questions, we can ask them now.
All right, thank you very much. I move that the Executive Standing Committee accept the 2020-2021 Women's Advisory Committee Annual Report as presented. All right. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. No, just thank you so much for the support of this committee to the Women's Advisory Committee. I've had the pleasure of sitting on this committee since the very beginning, and I got to tell you, this is a group of women who knows how to get stuff done. You know, they're very committed, they're very engaged, and you know, we at that committee, you get a report, and there's always an action item that follows. So appreciate the you know, the guidance of the chair to oversee that committee. It is a new one, and I think it's on track to make some real changes in the municipality. So very happy to make this motion and recommend that it be accepted today at Executive Standing Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and for your involvement in this committee from the beginning. Anybody else with questions? Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation this morning. I just wanted to ask if there's anything you could tell us about the housing security project that you're working on. Is there any highlights that you would like to mention here so we can get a sense of how you view it?
We had a presentation on the Home for Good project and I'm perhaps you've had the opportunity to hear a presentation on that Home for Good project. If not, I would strongly encourage that you invite the sponsors of that research. They were the YWCA of Halifax, Alice House, and Marguerite Center, and I believe the Elizabeth Fry Society. And what they told us was very disturbing about the issues of housing security facing women. Women have different needs than men. Women often are single parents, and their needs for housing center around being close to schools and close to community centers and supports that would help them be better, you know, able to carry out their role as parents. We also learned that the number one concern of women, and this was very disturbing to me, the number one concern for women with regard to housing were landlords that preyed on them for sexual favors, etc., in order for them to have their apartment serviced or with regard to rent. And so the issue of landlords and their responsibilities to conduct themselves appropriately, that is something that needs to be looked at. So those are issues that came to our attention. As I said, we're trying to determine as our committee, as an advisory committee, what is our role? How can we address these issues? But thank you for the question. I appreciate being able to kind of relay that information, and I encourage you to ask to have a presentation on the Home for Good project.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that comment. Thank you.
Anybody else? It's worth acknowledging, I think you acknowledged in one of your slides, Councillor Nicol, Councillor Blackburn being very involved in the start of this. We're proud of having this committee and know that the work that it does is really important. We thank you for the work that you're doing and all of the committee members. Any final thoughts before we go to a vote on this, which I'm sure will be non-controversial? Not the comments, but the vote. You okay? Doctor, you want anything, final thoughts? Okay.
Thank you to you, and my hat's off definitely to Councillor Nicol and Councillor Blackburn, or former Councillor Nicol and Councillor Blackburn. I know they led the charge. They gained support of you and others, and without their hard work, the committee would not be in existence. So thanks very much to them.
Yeah. Thank you. And we know that Councillor Nichol will take that on to her new lower form of government where she now serves. All right, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. I think that's our public agenda. If somebody wants to look at the in-camera minutes and perhaps approve those before we go in camera, we could consider that. Councillor Blackburn, seconded by Deputy Mayor. On the minutes, all those in favor? Okay, that is carried. I believe, Mr. Clerk, that's all we have in public. If somebody wants to move that we will go in camera, we will do that. Moved by Councillor Russell, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Okay, we'll move in camera. Way. 1425, Catherine, can you do that one, the one that everybody wants? And, hang on now. 1421, who do we not have? Deputy Mayor, you got 1421? I just want to ask a question of colleagues. Are we comfortable with the way we make these appointments? I often think that, you know, with all the other stuff going on, do we take the time? I mean, I think from the interview panel on, I think is fine, but I just wonder if I've been thinking for some time if there's a better way of doing this. You know, we get all these emails all these resumes. It's really hard to kind of go through them, and that's why we, you know, ask staff to do it. Anyway, I just ask you to think about that before we start doing a batch of these again. Okay, let's go. Does somebody want to move? We go back in public? Moved by Councillor Russell, seconded by Councillor Blackburn. All in favor? Let's go back. Are we good? Okay. All right, colleagues, we're back in public session of Executive Committee. Today's November 22nd to ratify some of the work we did in camera. Item 14.2.1, Personnel. Deputy Mayor.
I'm going to take it.
Councillor Russell.
Thank you. I move that the Executive Standing Committee, 1, adopt the recommendations as outlined in the private and confidential staff report dated November 17th, 2021, and 2, direct that the staff report dated November 17th, 2021 be maintained as private and confidential.
Okay. Second by Councillor Blackburn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. 14.2.2, Councillor Russell.
1, adopt the recommendations as outlined in the private and confidential staff report dated November 16th, 2021, and 2, direct that the staff report dated November 16th, 2021 be maintained as private and confidential.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That's carried. 14.2.3, Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I move that the Executive Standing Committee, 1, adopt the recommendations as outlined in the private and confidential staff report dated November 16th, 2021, and 2, direct that the staff report dated November 16th, 2021 be maintained as private and confidential. I so move.
Seconded by Councillor Russell. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. 14.2.4, Personnel Matter. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Executive Standing Committee 1 adopt the recommendations as outlined in private and confidential staff report dated November 16th, 2021, and 2, direct the staff report dated November 16th, 2021 be maintained as private and confidential.
Councillor Blackburn. Any discussion? Ready for the question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. 14.2.5, Personnel Matter. Councillor Morse.
Colleagues to do this for me. I'm really struggling with where to find these things today.
Okay.
Apologize.
Councillor Mason.
1425.
14.2.5, yeah.
I move that the Executive Standing Committee adopt the recommendations as outlined in the private and confidential staff report dated November 16th, 2021, and 2, direct the staff report dated November 16th, 2021 be maintained as private and confidential.
Second by Councillor Russell. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, colleagues. We have no other added items, Mr. Clerk. Notices of motion. Public participation. Date of the next meeting will be December the 13th, 2021. I will accept, if there's nothing else, a motion to adjourn. Thank you. We are adjourned until December 13th. Thank you.